shikataganai means that you can't be helped. This is how Japanese learn to do things. The government told you to leave, so they said they didn't go against it. Nobody fought against it. They say, oh, shikataganai, we can't help because the government said so, so we're gonna go. This is the famous saying, shikataganai. It's always there. My name is Takeshi. That is the registered name, Takeshi Nakano. My father came to Canada in 1920, and I was born in Vancouver in 1926. When I was 7 years old, I went to Japan because in those days, Japanese were discriminated and they couldn't get a job. They were not allowed to become a lawyer. They were not allowed to become a teacher. And people who graduated from university had to work in the lumber camp. The only thing they could do is send young kids back to Japan to learn Japanese. And come back, they could work in the Japanese company. So they sent me back to Japan when I was 7 years old. And I was there for 5 years.
My real name is Emiko, and that's my registered name. I was born in Vancouver, but I didn't live near Japantown like George did. We were way in the east. My father worked as a bellhop, and then he opened his own grocery store. Before the war started, all these men used to come to work at the shipyard, and they would ask, do you have anything to eat? So my mother used to make sandwiches, and then my father thought, well, maybe we should open a coffee shop.
At that time, the war has already started in Japan and China. The world is getting very scary place. And my parents thought that if you leave me there too long, you might not be able to come back. So I came back in 1938. I didn't speak a word of English. I was too young to go to work, so I had to go back to school. On the 8th grade, the war started. So we all went to school, and we would just stand outside, and the vice principal came out and said, you are no longer wanted in this school. We can't have you. And we all went to camp, internment camp.
We lived in a tent. We got there on November the 1st. So it was snowing, and then we were in this regular tent. So my father said, oh, this is crazy. We can't stay here. But they had a place called Lemon Creek. But people didn't want to go there because there was no electricity, no plumbing. So they had all these shacks built. We got one shack because we were a big family. And we didn't have electricity, so they would bring us 2 candles every night.
We had 2,600 people crammed in this internment camp. And we lived in a place where it's high up in the mountain. So the winter is very cold. It comes down to 30 degrees and lots of snow. You could see the trickles of ice inside the wall.
It was winter and the wood was all wet, so it wouldn't burn and it would die by morning. It was really cold.
Only recently did my dad show me this really interesting map of the actual camp and where all the houses were.
At war's end, they had a choice. You couldn't go back to Vancouver, so you had to go east.
We were told either go back to Japan. They said there's a lot of people haven't even seen Japan before, right? They're just Canadian-born people, but either go back to Japan or go east. So we'll go to Montreal. It was the first year, and at Christmas time, this Catholic women's group, they decided to have a Christmas party or something.
One of the girls that I knew from Vancouver, she says, oh, I'm going to invite George.
And I think Amy was there, and I didn't know her. That's the first time I met, I think.
And then the first time I met him, and then he asked me to dance. I didn't know how to dance at that time because my parents were very strict.
I can't remember when we got serious or not.
I guess I liked him because he was not handsome, but he was cute.
Well, she was quiet and she's pretty. To me, she was beautiful.
Actually, he didn't ask me to marry him. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but he said his mother wanted him to get married.
I don't know whether she liked me or not, but anyway, so she didn't mind me at the time. I don't think so. So I asked her to marry. Our church just started in '46, and I started involved in 1948, 2 years later, and I became a president of the Young Buddhist Society. And after that, I joined the board for the next 40 years.
My father was very involved in our church in Montreal, and he was always on the board or on the executive of some kind. And so he had meetings, regular meetings. I don't know if they were once or twice a month, but we always knew he was going to a church meeting.
Church was the main thing. That's where most of the community got together. Our church in Montreal was not just my parents, all the other parents that were their age. They were all dedicated. They worked hard for the church.
One thing that describes my parents really well is they're very committed to their church. I mean, church has been a big part of their life. And it's not because they're super religious or anything. It's just that was community for them. That was their social life.
From 46 to 52, in that 6 years, I worked about 5 places. I didn't have a trade, so I went for 2 years drafting school in the night school. And I went into Marconi Company, which is a huge company in Montreal. I worked there as an assembly line for TV and radio, and then I became an inspector at the machine shop. So they asked me if I wanted to go into drafting. There's an opening in the TV department. You want to go in and try for 3 months. So I tried 3 months, and then I got the job. I didn't know there was another person there with me. So they were testing who's the better. And the other guy was a McGill graduate. And he didn't get the job. I got the job.
In those days, in the early days, in the 50s and 60s, televisions were made out of wood. The cabinets were made out of wood. They were very elaborate, and it was almost like furniture, right? So that's what he would draw.
After 5 years at Marconi, I went to a place called Fleetwood, and I stayed there for about 17 years. In 1973, I got to know the vice president of the Hitachi company. He asked me, why don't you come work with us? So I stayed at Hitachi for 20 years until I retired.
Before we had the car, we used to take them to the park by bus. So I guess we played around in the backyard. We had a little swimming pool in the backyard.
Every year we went on vacation. So, I mean, that was our thing. No matter what, we always went somewhere.
Well, we would go to Lake George. Probably went to Lake George the most.
It was great. Like, that was our time to really spend with the family.
They took us to Boston. That was the first time we ever stayed in a hotel, a real hotel.
We went to the Maritimes. We've gone to New Hampshire. Yeah, then we went to Florida in 1980. I was 11 years old, so that was the first time on a plane. So that was really cool.
It was probably the time where we really got to know my dad, especially because my dad worked every day. He left the house at 7:30, came home at 5, and we didn't see him all day. And I guess that was when we really got to know him and a different side of him, where he wasn't working and he wasn't thinking about work.
But we enjoyed it every year. Like, it's amazing. Every year there was a place for us to go.
We weren't super rich, but our lives were rich.
We were always doing something at home. There was never a time where we weren't doing anything.
Every Friday night, I had to go to Japanese dancing lessons.
Saturday, I had to go to school Saturday mornings.
Every Saturday, we had Japanese school, and every Sunday, we had Sunday school.
We had music lessons, or we were going to church.
And then the rest of the time, we were at school. So we knew that this is what we were going to do every week. But what it offered us was friendship.
Learning Japanese, learning about the Japanese culture, it just broadens your outlook, broadens your scope.
This was a time when I got to meet other kids who were kind of like me.
You don't know it at the time. It's going to school, you're learning these things, but You realize it after.
New Year's Day was a big thing. That was like the best day of the year for us.
It's actually to start the year, everybody start the year fresh.
My mother would cook probably for a week. She'd have this huge spread of food.
All the men would go to all the different houses of our relatives. So Dad would go from house to house.
And it started from at lunchtime, and it normally didn't end till like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
The moms would stay home. They would greet the guests, and the men would spend about a half an hour at each house.
As children, on New Year's Day was the best. You could eat whenever you wanted, whatever you wanted.
We can eat whenever we wanted and however much we wanted. And there was always a ton of food.
And that is a Japanese tradition, and to this day, my parents still do that.
My father is very, very organized. He's organized to the point of being almost obsessive.
When we go on trips, he had the map, but he also had a written version of the map. So we knew which highway to turn off just by reading it.
You knew exactly what he was going to be doing at any time of the day, any day of the week.
If you go in his house now, everything is, he can find anything for you. If he said, well, we went on a trip in 1991, and he can bring out his little folder from his 1991 trip and tell you where he went.
And my mother, she's tireless. She volunteers even now at the hospital.
There's a picture of her with a hospital bed, and I said, do you push that bed around? And she's like, oh yeah.
As far as if I could use one word for my parents is they have countless bounds of energy.
They have more energy than we do. When we visit them, we go to bed at 10 o'clock. My mother's still like doing stuff and cooking and doing all kinds of things till midnight.
I think it really is a state of mind. It's they feel young, and so they feel like they can still do things, and so they do things.
I've been doing line dancing ever since we moved here, so it must be going on to maybe 17 years. I go because it's good for my brains, because you have to keep remembering those steps. I think I'm the oldest one there. I'm the only one with this white hair.
My dad loves to bowl. He's been bowling since I can remember. He's always been good at it, and he's still very good.
I bowl in the Monday afternoon from 1 to about 3:30. I enjoy it because I've been bowling for the last 40 years, but my average is going down every year. But for my age, maybe I'm okay, you know.
Fridays, now that Jessica is not at school, she brings Aiden, and we have lunch together.
You want some more hot dogs, RJ? A lot of my friends are so surprised on how involved my grandparents are in my life and how active they are still, like in the church and in the community. You know, I tell my friends, oh yeah, you know, they're 91 and 90, and they never believe it.
Not a lot of people get to say, my kids have great grandparents. The fact that they are here, present mentally, and they're able to run around and play with my kids still.
What does a lion say? Is it lion? What does a lion say?
It's amazing to have that they get to be a part of their great-grandkids' lives.
The only thing they wanted for their 65th anniversary was for all of us to go on a cruise together. So that's what we did.
5 years ago, we took a cruise, a Caribbean cruise, the whole family. It was my parents, all the 4 siblings, their kids, their boyfriends or husbands, and their children.
When we did that 60th anniversary cruise, you know, all the grandchildren said, oh, this was fun, we should do it again. So on their 65th, we did it again.
It was a nice cruise because my great-grandchildren were able to come.
3 great-grandchildren came this time.
And everybody gets along with everybody.
The thing is that we all enjoy each other's company.
And the whole group came, so it was just wonderful.
They had to start basically from zero when they came out east from the internment camps, and then ending up to a point where they're able to take all 22 of us on a cruise is pretty significant.
For my parents' 65th anniversary, we were all wearing the same shirts. I think the whole ship knew that we were one big clan of 22 people. So it has my parents' first initial A and G, celebrating 65 years.
My parents are, they've always just been there because they've been there for my whole life. I'm 52 years old and they've been there for 52 years for me, and they're always there. My dad still drives me around and my mom's still cooking for me.
Everybody thinks my mom and dad are great. Everybody knows my parents.
They were very well respected in our community, in the Japanese community. I was always referred to as, oh, you're George's son.
Always when I bump into people and they don't know who I am and they find out, oh, you're Amy and George's granddaughter. Always that's wow, I love Amy and George. Everybody loves them.
Very dedicated, they're genuine.
Very kind and generous and honorable, respectful.
They're very respectful. They've always been respectful of each other, and I think that's why people respect them.
They're not ones to waste anything. They're not the kind of people to take things for granted.
When they commit to something, it's all the way.
That's what we've seen in our parents. That's the example that they've been living.
They've sort of led by example on how I should lead an ideal life.
They have instilled those values into me in that culture, and it's something that I'm really proud to be.
Jichan is pretty much the anchor of the family. He's soft-spoken, but very powerful in everything he does.
He's always going to be there for you no matter what. And he gives things without anything in return. He's kind of like the rock of the family.
He's a very patient man, taught me how to drive. We went to baseball games together. I got into baseball because of him. I also really like bowling because of him, so.
I'd go to give him a kiss and he'd rub his beard against my face and it's all scruffy.
Oh, that hurt!
I would hold his hand and he would squeeze my knuckles and I'd laugh because, oh, it hurts, it hurts.
My grandmother is such a warm and loyal person. She gives so much and wants to give so much and never really asks for anything back.
She's generous and helpful, and she is very creative.
It's amazing to hear people talk about them in such positive ways, and everyone loves them and values them and really respects them.
If you know them, you love them, because there's nothing not to love.
I guess I feel lucky to have them as my parents.
I think I would like to thank my parents.
Thank you, Mom and Dad, for always being there for us.
I think I just want to thank them for letting me become the independent person that I am.
I would probably say thank you, because what they have given me,
they allowed us all to just be ourselves and to take charge of our lives and know that where we were going was where we were going because that's where we wanted to be.
what they gave up for me is I'm really grateful for.
Bacha, Chicha, thank you.
Whenever we needed you, you would be there in any way, shape, or form.
I love you, Bacha and Jicha, and thank you.
I'm super, super blessed, so thank you.
Something I don't say very often is, I love you.
Thank you, and I love you, and
We are really honored to have you in our lives. And truly, truly blessed. Thank you.
Okage-sama means thank you. Because of your kindness, I could live through it. I could go through life. Because of you, I'm healthy. Thank you very much.
holder. I guess they thought we needed one because our old one is more than 43 years old.